Hi, I'm Wes Platt, the lead writer and developer of OtherSpace at jointhesaga.com, and this is an episode in which I'm going to be reading three flash fiction stories that I've done about OtherSpace in the past. And I'm doing this episode as an open, available to everybody podcast sort of thing. And then future episodes are going to be available for patrons who give to our Patreon at patreon.com/jointhesaga. So thanks for listening, and thanks again to our Raconteur sponsors, El Windus and Newt. I really appreciate the support. It helps to pay for our server costs and underwrite the expense of giving out prizes every month to our players of the month. So thanks again, and I hope you enjoy. Number 1. Seeking Supremacy. Shafts of sunlight poured through colorful plasma fields, creating a kaleidoscopic dance of dust motes in the great temple of Opemot as the Okami rose from his seat at the table to speak. Our resources are depleted, even more so than yours, Vinos Evanel said, eyes swirling blue and violet as he placed long, slender fingers on the gray stone tabletop. The Tsar's bid for power cost us much in blood and treasure. A growl rose in the throat of the Apodian to his left. Jorta Opote, historian for the Great Temple and emissary for the High Priest of Opodi, swiveled his snout so that his glittery black eyes could fix on the alien. Perhaps you should have considered that before begging us to join this so-called Tsarist supremacy. At the moment you appear anything but supreme. The Thull across the table watched with one functional, hazy yellow eye, like the tainted yolk of an egg gone bad. A jagged scar bisected the socket where the matching eye used to be. Fleshy tendrils wriggled along the rim of the mouth as he munched on skittering black bugs that crawled across his slime-dappled gray skin. The great slug offered nothing new to the conversation for the moment, content to masticate on insects. I am not saying we will not stand by you should the Outversers and their confederacy follow through on this talk of waging war against you, Vinos replied to the Apodian. However, any aid we offer will be limited in the short term. Projections farther out are more optimistic. Our supply of Khmer artifacts continues to grow at a healthy pace thanks to the new rift drives. The improvements make them more efficient with every iteration, thanks to our stalwart Thull comrades. He inclined his silver-maned head in acknowledgment and respect to the bug-munching alien. Still the Thull said nothing in reply. Jorta's blunt teeth clicked together as his brow furrowed. After considering the Aquami's response, he said, If the Confederacy wins the allegiance of the Lavori, our short-term horizon might be measured in days. Do you consider it likely that the Lavori will side with these Outversers? Vinos asked. The Apodian shook his head. No. However, they might ally with the Hecate and the Commonwealth. Such a turn of events would be far more unpleasant than the war posturing of the Outversers. That would bode ill for us both, I should think. Vinos spread his hands with a sigh. Then you must do all that you can to protect against such an arrangement. Must I? The Apodian growled. While you and your people are off hunting for shiny rocks, you expect me to hold the predators at bay with what? My pleasant disposition? A faint smile from the Okami proceeded. You are an official in service to the oldest temple on the planet Kamsho. I cannot imagine that you are a stranger to intrigue and conspiracy. Rankled, the bristly gray and silver fur around his thick neck standing on end, Jorta shoved his chair back and stood to his full height to glare up at Vinos. The Okami stood at least 2 feet taller and seemed bemused by the Apodian. Jorta snarled. We are not talking about petty bickering among priests and record-keepers, Vinos. You may find this all amusing, but if Opemot falls, rest assured that Moltvaros will be ash well before the jungles claim what remains. Finally, the Thull dropped something solid and a little heavy on the table, drawing the attention of the Okami and the Apodian. It was a rune-inscribed cylinder of black stone, rolling slowly left and right as it settled in place. This gets us nowhere, he said, his words made mushy by the nubbed cartilaginous teeth and fleshy lip tentacles. May I? Both Venus and Jorta assented without a word. The Thull started manipulating the cylinder with finger tentacles that tracked greasy gray slime over the runes, which soon began glowing a bright cerulean hue. Light flashed next to the Thull before a shimmering rift materialized, stretching about 4 feet above the white marble floor. Through that rift stepped a figure clad in black hood and robes, carrying a gray fabric sack in its gloved right hand. Venus and Jorta stared at the newcomer, who was even shorter than the Opodian, and then they gave puzzled glances to the Thull. "You were wise to invite me to this gathering, ancient shog," the hooded figure hissed, tossing the bag onto the table with a meaty thud. "Your companions must understand, however, that I will tolerate none of their weak-willed behavior. Those who do not show backbone do not deserve spines. I have a wall with space for a few more." Both Apodian and Akami seemed irked by such condescension from a diminutive stranger. Jorta then seemed further irritated by the sight of purplish fluid leaking from inside the bag and onto the table. A soft growl began to build in his throat, but Venus interrupted before the Apodian's rage could get the better of him. "Who are you?" the Akami inquired. The stranger raised his gloved hands to draw back the hood, revealing pebbled green flesh on a snout that bristled with fangs. Bright yellow-orange eyes peered up at Venus. "I am Herc of Hatch Vril, Thosoth of the Clawed Fist Fleet. The Null have a mighty war machine. You have artifacts and technology that are useful to the Null. We will give your alliance the fangs and claws that it so sorely lacks." "And the bag?" Jorta ventured. "What's in the bag?" His voice trembled. It was obvious he hovered between wanting to know and wanting very much to not know at all. Hercvril clacked his fangs together, leaning forward to sniff a few times at the damp bag as the purple stain spread. Finally he drew back and said, "The goddess Nalia disagreed with my proposal to return our people to their rightful place among the stars. I find such object lessons are effective." He tilted his snout, looking from Jorta to Venus. There was no debate. Number 2. Coercion. Again with the light, this time, though, with the splintered stick in the ear. "That's a new one today," he thought. He didn't say it, however. No, he was too busy screaming. Eventually, the sharp pain ebbed into an aching throb. "Did you act alone?" The deep-voiced Hecate interrogator, a close companion these past few days of his misadventure on the colony world of Ashcott. He hadn't seen the big fellow's face yet. The interrogator had carefully kept the shadows behind him and to the left. They had strapped him to a metal table, which they angled with his head toward the floor and his floppy orange-furred feet toward the ceiling. They weren't asking him to confess anymore. He supposed that was progress. They had him. They had the computer that he had used. Apparently they didn't consider it possible that he had managed to succeed on his own, but he had. Undeniably, he had broken through the digital fortification around their emergence program, which established cultural brainwashing and social programming for a generation of new Hecate colonists. He had breached the walls and rewritten the code so that the new generation would demand to govern their own destiny. "I do my best work alone," he rasped. Sticks in both ears for a while. Eventually, someone shrieked something panicked about his helpers. He wanted that person to shut up. Unfortunately, he realized too late it was his voice doing the shrieking. "Now," the interrogator said, leaning close behind his braced head, "their names." Number 3. Years. The years did not used to matter at all. In her youth, Komoro had hung low above the sun-smeared horizon of Lotor in a distant age when that planet still had a sky and remained intact. Back then, the most advanced inhabitants of that world swung by their tails from tree to tree, chewing on bark and hiding from feathered predators long before they would evolve and form the much-envied Lotorian Trade Syndicate. She had roamed the reaches of hyperspace at a time well before the Khmer unleashed the Ilrakam hive mind on the galaxy. The great Yaralu knew of the Khmer millennia before they could pass between the folds of time and space. Her memories even stretched back to an era when the repugnant slime-drenched slugs known as the Thull had prospered so much that they had an empire known as the Crawl stretching across the ancient expanse. People today could scarcely believe that the Khmer had once bowed to Thull masters. Any Okami descendants who heard such claims would dismiss them as lies and heresy. Nevertheless, it was true. For ages, Komoro had been content to travel slowly among the stars, letting the years slip by like forgotten wisps of dust. Her kind, great sentient organic vessels lived for tens of millions of years. Truth be told, she had lost count of her own age. She knew she was old, though. She could feel it. Soon she might go to dust or drift inert through the stars as a cold, dead husk. She didn't want to die without finding the Homestalk. There the Uralu were born. When their life ended, it was where they were supposed to return so that they could pass on their collected knowledge to the younger generations. But the Homestalk had fled into the great dark with the coming of the Jiraki fleet when the Uralu was still quite young. The Hekati had helped thwart the invasion in one of their first efforts with an organized space armada. It was widely believed that between the Hekati fleet and the brutal methods of Khmer against the Jiraki people, the invaders had been set back thousands of years. No one had seen the Homestalk since. Perhaps it was destroyed, lost to the war despite those valiant efforts by the Uralu allies. But Komoro was among those who believed that the Homestalk still existed somewhere out among the stars, keeping ahead of enemies like the Jiraki. She had been searching for the Homestalk when the first Outverser refugees arrived. That had been more than 3 years ago. By now she had hoped they would settle on new worlds to call their own, or find places for themselves among the inhabitants of Hecate Prime or Kamsho. But they hadn't. They stubbornly clung to Komoro, comfortable with the safety and security provided by the Uralu. She couldn't seek out the Homestalk until they were gone. They wouldn't be gone until she died or they reached the end of their own lifespans. Even if she died, she thought, they might still make a home in the massive carcass. That is the way of opportunistic feeders. The years mattered so much more now. Something would have to change. Soon. And that's it for the first installment of my flash fiction readings from OtherSpace. Again, if you want to join the saga, the best way to join is by visiting SlackPass, slackpass.io/jointhesaga, and that you can use that to automatically sign up through the interface, get connected, and start playing. Looking forward to it, and again, future episodes of this are going to be available for Patreons. So if you go to patreon.com/jointhesaga, contribute at least $5 a month, you'll get these automatically in the community feed there. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.